Sherlock Holmes, renowned for his extraordinary intellect and unrivaled deductive reasoning, had faced countless criminals throughout his career. Yet, none would prove as formidable or elusive as the one who emerged one fateful evening, challenging everything Holmes had believed about crime, intelligence, and his own abilities. This was a case unlike any other, one that stumped the great detective and ultimately left a permanent mark on his legacy. It all began when an unusual letter arrived at 221B Baker Street. The envelope was unmarked, sealed with an intricate wax emblem that Sherlock couldn't immediately identify. Curiosity piqued, Holmes broke the seal and read the contents of the letter. The message was brief, yet its tone was chilling in its simplicity. It read, "Solve this if you can, Holmes. The game is not what it seems. I'll be waiting." No name was provided, no signature to indicate the sender. It was a cold, cryptic challenge, one that would soon prove to be more than just a riddle. It would be the beginning of an intricate game where Holmes himself was the target. Not long after receiving this unsettling letter, Holmes was visited by Lestrade, Scotland Yard's perpetually beleaguered detective. Lestrade was accompanied by disturbing news that would further intrigue Holmes. A series of high-profile robberies had recently taken place throughout London. In each case, rare and priceless artifacts were stolen: ancient manuscripts, priceless paintings, and glittering jewels that had been held in museums and private collections alike. There was one disturbing detail that linked the cases together. The thefts were clean. No traces of forced entry, no signs of struggle, no witnesses. And most troubling of all, there were no clues left behind, no fingerprints, no footprints, no discernible evidence that might indicate the perpetrator's identity. It was as though the criminals had disappeared without a trace. Holmes, ever the keen observer, began piecing together the few fragments of evidence that remained. His mind worked relentlessly, reviewing each robbery in minute detail. It didn't take long before he noticed something odd. The locations of the thefts seemed entirely random, with no discernible pattern to their timing or geography. The manner in which they were carried out was equally perplexing, as if the criminals had planned them with an almost supernatural precision. But then, Holmes noticed something that would send a chill down his spine. These crimes were strikingly similar to a series of high-profile heists that had taken place years earlier, a string of crimes that had never been solved. The realization struck Holmes like a lightning bolt. He wasn't simply dealing with a common thief. The person behind these crimes was no ordinary criminal. This was someone who had studied the art of crime, someone who had studied him. Holmes felt a creeping sense of unease. The robberies were not being committed by a typical thief. They were being orchestrated by a criminal mastermind who had not only studied the victims and their prized possessions, but had also thoroughly analyzed Holmes himself, the methods he used to solve crimes, the patterns he relied on, and the manner in which he conducted his investigations. The more Holmes thought about it, the more he became certain that the person behind these robberies wasn't interested in wealth or notoriety. No, this criminal had a much more personal objective: to challenge Holmes, to expose the great detective's vulnerabilities, and ultimately to prove that even Sherlock Holmes could be outsmarted. Holmes had always prided himself on his intellectual superiority. He had built a reputation as a man who could solve any mystery, unravel any crime, and outwit even the most dangerous criminals. But this new adversary, who began to be referred to only as the Shadow, had an uncanny understanding of Holmes's psychology. The Shadow was playing a game, and in this game, Holmes was the prey. The criminal had a clear goal: to dismantle Holmes's very belief in his own invincibility. This was not a game of theft. It was a game of intellectual warfare. The tension began to build as the robberies continued unabated, each one more calculated and elusive than the last. Holmes, now fully engrossed in the case, found himself unraveling a series of increasingly complex clues, all of which seemed designed to mislead him. Every time Holmes thought he was close to solving the mystery, the criminal would elude him, leaving behind only tantalizing fragments of evidence. It was clear to Holmes that he was being toyed with, led through a maze of carefully constructed deceptions. And the more he tried to outthink the shadow, the more he realized just how much he was being manipulated.